Good evening, everybody. It is now 6:30. Welcome to the Lincoln County Courthouse. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for that, everybody. We'll start this meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission with a few remarks. This meeting is streamed live, and when adjourned and posted, it will be available at lincolncountysd.gov. The order of events will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff findings. The applicant will then be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and answer any questions from the County Planning Commission. I will then open the floor to public comment, first in persons in support of the application, and then persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. Lastly, decisions on change of zones will be scheduled for additional public hearing during an upcoming Board of Commissioners meeting. The decisions on the conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. Thank you for your cooperation. All right, we do have a quorum present tonight for the Planning and Zoning Board. I will now ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve, Scott.
Second, Sweeter.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Against?
Not against, but I'll abstain, Jerry, since I was not here at the last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Todd. All right, we will now move on to the meeting agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, Mr. Brown?
No change, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make that motion, Boots.
Do we have a second?
Second, Sweeter.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? All right, that passes. Next, we will have public input on non-agenda items. So anyone in the audience like to mention anything to us that's not on the agenda, please feel free. All right, seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and we'll move into our first item of business, conditional use permit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Toby Brown, representing County Planning and Zoning Department. This first item before you is an application for a conditional use permit. This is for a telecommunications tower. So this application is for a property that's approximately a little over 4.75 miles south of the city of Canton. It is out in the rural area. Subject property is a 40-acre parcel. However, the lease portion of this would be approximately 100 foot by 100 foot of leased area for the telecommunications tower. As you can see, subject property is zoned A1 agricultural, as is all surrounding properties to this parcel. And these are some screenshots of the field. So the applicant did submit an application to the County Planning and Zoning Department for a leased area on the property to construct a 195-foot tall tower, telecommunications tower. Identified that within this area there is a need for telecommunications space or availability of telecommunications. And so with this application, staff did review the ordinance. There's quite a bit of application materials that are required to be submitted with the application. So staff did review all those materials. identified that all of those requirements are met. The main requirement is there is a 600-foot setback from the tower to residential properties. This application exceeds that minimum requirement, as well as this is below the FAA requirements for lighting on that tower, as well as FCC requirements for that. And the majority of the county's requirements differs to the FAA requirements. So that's the minimum standards of the FAA requirements. So the applicant did send notice within 500 feet of the property. We did post a property. Did have one interested party that did reach out to staff regarding the application, just kind of inquisitory to what the application was and the location and those different types of things. So again, reviewing the application requirements with the county's requirements, did identify that this application is in conformance with the minimum standards of the county zoning ordinance. It is also in compliance with the comprehensive plan. This area is identified as long-term agricultural land uses. This is a land use that is allowed within the A1 agricultural zoning district. There's no really specific performance standard other than the setback requirements, the FAA and the FCC requirements, which the application does meet. As well as this does not pose any impacts to agricultural land uses or future land uses on adjacent properties, as well as it does meet the minimum setback requirements of the ordinance. So staff does recommend approval of this application with the 5 conditions that were listed in the staff report. Do feel that these requirements will mitigate any types of issues that potentially would occur with it. Do anticipate that during construction there would be some minor inconvenience to adjoining properties, but once construction is completed, there's really no additional impacts to adjoining properties with it, as well as not having a lighted facility on that will be less objectionable to surrounding landowners. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, to gladly answer any questions. Otherwise, the applicant is in attendance this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you. You can put it if you want, put anything there.
All right, at this time, I'll ask the applicant to come forward and talk about the proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council, Planning Commission members. A little brief run through here, should be less than 5 minutes.
Could you state your name for the record?
Woody Krogh, I'm a site development agent with Bureau Consulting, address 9973 Valley View Road, Eden Prairie, Minnesota. Here representing the applicant in this conditional use application. The Towers LLC. The Towers is a built-to-suit partner with Verizon Wireless in this application. So initially, this site would be for Verizon Wireless antennas. There's co-location ability on the tower. If other carriers came along, they could add their antennas as well. We've executed an agreement with the landowner, John Ulrichson, on parcel 09749142030, which is ag-zoned property south of Canton. The proposed 195-foot self-support tower, as Toby mentioned, does exceed all the setback requirements. The key one, I guess, might be considered to the right-of-way. We're 130 feet from the right-of-way line to the west of the tower site, with the tower, of course, being on the east side of, I think that's 480th. All other setbacks are 500 feet or more. The nearest residence is about 1,400 feet northwest of the proposed tower. You do have sheet A1 in the staff report. It does lay out those setbacks. Also shown on that A1 sheet from the construction drawings is a new gravel access road that is proposed from 480th straight east to the tower site with sufficient turnaround area adjacent to the lease area. Power and fiber are planned to follow that same path as the access road. Regarding aircraft safety, Mr. Brown did touch on it, but we obtained for all sites, we have to do an airspace analysis regarding location and height of the tower. In this case, our screening indicated that we're not required to file notice with the FAA, meaning, as Mr. Brown said, there'll be no aviation lighting or markings on the tower. Other ordinance requirements that were submitted include a full zoning narrative that addresses how each of the applicable county ordinance requirements for towers are met, a statement of need from Verizon, including coverage maps, was submitted. And I'll just hit the high note on that. Verizon's need for the site from their RF engineer. There is a significant service gap in Verizon wireless communications network in Canton, South Dakota, the Gap area. Verizon customers using their devices in and around the area are likely to experience diminished call quality, slow and unreliable data transmission speeds, dropped calls, and blocked calls. Verizon's service gap in the Gap area has existed for several years. I'm sure many of you are well aware of that. We did a balloon test where a balloon was raised at the location of the tower to the height of the tower, and we submitted some pictures from a 1 mile radius around the site where the tower could be seen and we also supplied some photo simulations from from the nearest residence to the south and from the nearest residence to the north with before and after pictures of what the tower would look like. The applicant submitted a letter regarding their compliance with FCC requirements. Also, a letter regarding decommissioning if the tower ever is stopped, use of the tower is ever terminated. Also, a letter allowing for co-location of other carriers was submitted. A certificate of insurance is required by the ordinance, and a bond was also submitted, which is also ordinance requirement. Regarding noise, dust, or other adverse environmental effects, the site will not produce any of those. Also, I did touch base with the state park that's to the east there. November 6th of 2025, I spoke with Aaron. Sorry I didn't get his last name at the state park, but he said the tower sounds like, quote, good news, and he would inform his supervisor, Jason. Again, I didn't get his last name, but I never did hear back from them, so guess they don't have any opposition. Lastly, radio frequency, RF safety is a common concern in regard to environmental effects such as public health. Federal agencies, including the FCC, OSHA, EPA, FDA, et cetera, are the scientific experts on RF safety standards to which carriers must adhere. Section 704A of the Telecommunications Act of 1996 especially prohibits local authorities from considering these issues as part of the permitting process. Also submitted, that act was submitted as well as an RF fact sheet and FCC Bulletin 65, which details federal RF exposure guidelines that we have to abide by. So with that, we respectfully request approval of the application, the conditional use permit as submitted. Any questions?
Yes.
Happy to answer.
Yep. Thank you, Woody. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
No.
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I'll ask anyone in support of the application, please come forward and speak. And now I'll ask for anyone in opposition of the application, please come forward. All right, seeing none, I'll ask for a motion from the commission.
I'll move to approve, Scott.
Second, Boots.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, commissioners? Seeing none, I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Moser,
Yes.
Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Definite yes.
and Commissioner Jungling's also a yes. All right, thank you, good luck, and can't
Thanks,
wait to
Woody.
help the people down there. All right, with that, Mr. Brown, you want to take the second item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This next item is an application for a conditional use permit. This is for fireworks sales on the property. So subject property is a little over 1,000 feet to the east of the city of Lenox. Subject property, as you can see, is zoned A1 agricultural. That's approximately 2 acres in size. There is a church, I don't know if there are churches operating on the property, but the property is utilized for a church on the property. Subject property is zoned A1 agricultural. Property directly to the west and then to the north is zone C commercial. The property directly to the west would be the Prosper Event Center Hall. And then the property to what I could say to the north would be part of the Jerry's Auto Sales complex there. This would be looking on directly onto the property would be the north one where the site would be. So the applicant did submit an application to the department to conduct fireworks sales. Fireworks sales is allowed in the A1 agricultural district for a period of 9 days. And so that's the primary requirement or stipulation from a performance standard of it. So the applicant did submit an application to put a tent on the property, which is typically what they do in the A1 agricultural zoning district, for that 9-day period to sell fireworks on the property. And submitted a site plan that shows where appropriately the parking would be and that. There is, I call a driveway and a half on the property. There's a driveway that would directly access the church, and then there's one that's split on the property line to access Prosper Events. But to the best of my understanding that the applicant has worked with the owner of Prosper Events to utilize that driveway and that property, portion of that property. So as far as performance standards in the zoning regulations, the only requirement we really have is, again, the stipulation that it be a 9-day period, and that it is allowed in the A1 agricultural zoning district. The applicant is required to get a permit from the Department of South Dakota Public Safety. That permit does have some stipulations under state law as far as how far that there's allowed. One of the requirements, I should say, 2 of the requirements of the state permit or licensing is that the applicant would post a sign on the property that no smoking is allowed within 50 feet of the premises, as well as another sign to post on the property that no fireworks be discharged within 300 feet of the premises of the property. Again, that's a state law requirement that is addressing those 2 issues. There's other stipulations on it, but those are kind of the primary ones that we would focus on with it. So in reviewing the application, did identify that from a zoning perspective, this is allowed as a conditional use permit. Again, there's no performance standard, no setbacks, no other requirements other than deferring to state law requirements as far as licensing and permitting with that. Did identify that this property is zoned agricultural. There is commercially zoned property directly adjacent to it. From a zoning perspective, it might seem unique, but we don't consider this a commercial activity. We consider this just a land use that's allowed within the A1 agricultural zoning district. Do feel that during this 9-day period is a temporary use, essentially. So we think from a nuisance standpoint, it's unlikely to generate anything as far as what's within the ordinance requirements. A little bit of side analysis. As you're aware, the city of Lenox is going through some major construction in the area. So this area, or the road, the county road that goes past this property, is really the only primary period in and out of Lenox. So it is, that was one of the reasons that I believe that the applicant did choose this property. As well as, we have had some experience with the applicant. The applicant did receive a conditional easement previously from the county to operate fireworks cells on the 4-H grounds in the city, or in the county. And so with that, he did conduct those operations last year, really had no issues with the applicant. Did have a couple things that we addressed and that he addressed with it, and that's primarily signage in the right-of-way, but that was addressed. The rest of it was really beyond, from a zoning perspective, those were the main issues, but when he was made aware of it, he did correct that deficiency right away. So with that, I do know that staff did receive correspondence from the city administrator, from the city of Lennox, which I did place before you. I'll have the chair read that in the appropriate opposition side when it does get there. Did have some discussions with the city administrator regarding the correspondence. Did really identify, from county's perspective, is that that staff's not going to change their recommendation of approval because we do feel that this application does meet the county requirements. But with that, city staff does recommend denial of this application. Talked to him a little bit further. Really, the concern is that kind of 2 points is that what's somewhat unique to this is that the city of Lennox does allow fireworks sales within the city limits. Typically, that doesn't occur, but they do allow it, and with those, they do require then those applicants who are allowed to sell fireworks within the city of Lennox does have to meet some requirements with the fire department and those different types of things. So I think that's really the concern of the city from that perspective. Again, it's up to the board if they, on the approval of this application, but again, from county staff's perspective, we still recommend approval of this application with the 7 conditions that were listed in the staff analysis. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you and answer any questions that the board has for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
So is this just like a one-time thing, or is this something if we approve it, then it's every year?
So as conditioned, it would go with the land. So every year then, someone would be able to sell fireworks there. My understanding from the applicant is that he wants to intend to go back to the 4-H site next year. But in saying that, that could be a condition that you would add on to the conditions of approval if you so choose to approve it, that this would be limited to just the applicant for that period. So we have done that in the past with other applications, so. But good comment, that'd be good, yeah.
Yeah. All right, any additional questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I will ask the applicant to come forward and talk about their application, please.
It's good to see you, everybody. We were here about a year ago, and you guys graciously gave us a chance to sell on 4-H grounds, and we really appreciated that.
Could you state your name and address, please, for the
Yes,
record?
Andy Jorgensen, 1201 South Dunham Circle, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So yeah, you guys were gracious. You gave us a year on that property. We're grateful for that year. Because of said construction and just the changing of things, we're put in a position where we are just trying to find a spot primarily for this year. We're not really trying to park here forever, although we do think that if this location really took off, and we wouldn't mind staying here, frankly, because my wife and my family are here. We don't want to keep coming back and hanging out every single year. We would ask for mercy on that front, that we wouldn't keep coming back. And so what we do have is this opportunity for the 250th anniversary of America. If no other year I was on my knees asking you to please approve, it's just for this year so that we might have a location to serve Lennox. We served them last year. It would be a shame for us to not be able to do that this year. We do have a really good relationship with Prosper next door. If the city had any concerns about resource use, we actually did contact them, and in writing, they would love to let us use their fire hydrant if that was ever necessary. I can tell you for a fact, we have not had anything close to an accident in any of our fireworks stores. My wife and I have one in Sioux Falls, and we have a new one coming up in Parkston. This was our primary source, our family business that we run at some point, and so we just appreciate the opportunity to be here. Mike is the gym teacher at Lennox. He runs it. So he works at Prosper, and he works with them for their weddings. he essentially just got us connected to Dustin and Ally, which we are really good friends with them as well. They said, absolutely, we'd love to have you. And Mike has a good relationship with them there. So not only does he have a good relationship with the city of Lenox and is trying to do the whole flyers and car washes to, bring people in, but he also has a relationship with the neighbors. The church is in favor of that. And so we are simply asking for 9 days for the 250th anniversary of America, the chance to sell fireworks. And then if next year we have to talk about property here, property there, I'm less concerned about that. I'm more concerned about just a month from now, having the opportunity to run this, and see if this city is an opportunity for long term. That's our goal. So, with that, I yield the floor if there's any questions you guys have.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Seeing none? Thank you. All right, I'll ask anybody in support or favor of the application, please come forward. Now I'll ask anyone in opposition. I do have the letter, I'll read that into the record right now. Dated May 12th, 2026, Lincoln County Planning Commission. Dear Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to offer input on the proposed conditional use permit for Andy Jorgensen, E-Boom LLC / Fire Brothers, to operate a temporary fireworks stand on the property known as Faith Presbyterian Church. The city of Lenox has concerns over this type of retail operation at this location. While fireworks sales are permitted within our city limits, we also have available fire protection at every corner of the community. This property poses challenge property poses challenges in that nearest publicly available fire hydrant is over 1,000 feet away. The city respectfully requests that, if granted, the conditional use permit includes conditions for no smoking within 300 feet during the course of the 9-day period, and that no fireworks may be discharged within that same distance during the same time. Please be advised that given their proximity, neighboring properties will need to be informed of this requirement. Outside of practical concerns, the city references and adopt a comprehensive plan while evaluating such requests. In this case, the application is in conflict with the Lenox Comprehensive Plan in the following ways. Number one, growth management strategy objective. The city of Lenox maintains a goal of encouraging new commercial growth within city limits in order to ensure the availability and necessary utilities and transportation infrastructure. Number two, growth management strategy objective. The city of Lenox will oppose commercial developments outside municipal boundary. Item number three, growth management strategy policy. Discourage scattered commercial development. Given these overall concerns, the city of Lenox must oppose the conditional use permit. However, if the permit is granted, we respectfully ask conditions be placed as indicated above. Sincerely, Nathan Vanderplatz, City Administrator. All right, is there anyone else from the public in opposition? Seeing none, I'll close the floor to public input, and I'll ask a motion from the commission.
I'll move.
May I make a comment, please?
Can we do
After we
comments
make
after we
the
have a
motion.
proposal?
We'll wait till after.
Yeah, or we can
No, that's okay.
make amendments too, also to
No, make
the deal.
the motion first.
Yeah.
I'll move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Scott.
Second, Moser?
All right, any discussion?
I was just going to say that the Jorgensens had a great experience on the 4-H grounds, but some certain issues arose, and I hope we can eliminate those in the next year. And you can return, they did an adequate job, and I think they picked a great location. And if you want traffic in front of a business, 6,500 cars a day is not too bad. So anyway, good luck.
All right, other commissioners?
With that motion, is that what we have, or does that include what Lennox is also looking for?
No, that's his, so we'll have to add the conditions. Yeah, I was gonna
Yep.
speak to that unless you do, Commissioner Boots, if you'd like to.
Not for 2 weeks.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I was just gonna speak to that. I mean, if we wanted to, it looks to me like City of Lennox is just requesting us to add a condition for no smoking within 300 feet and no firework discharge, in that 9-day period. I guess, yeah, I'm neutral on those. I'll support it one way or the other. I don't feel strongly. The one thing though I do remember is what we added last year where we added the condition to review it, I believe, Mr. Brown, after a year.
I think it was temporary, whereas just for like 30 days rather than,
How did that work, Toby?
Yeah.
So that it wasn't a forever deal, I guess.
So, we did have a condition that the board would annually review it and approve it. The Board of Commissioners, sorry.
Yeah.
Because the Board of Commissioners is their property, so we went through that process. But that was the condition that was put on last year. This site is not owned by the county, so that,
So what could we add as a, I feel like we've done this on another fireworks stand somewhere else maybe, where we reviewed it after a year and then it was good to go.
yeah, I mean, certainly you can just do an annual review of it. That's fine, yeah.
Okay. I guess that's
From staff's perspective, the recommendations on the setbacks, we would have concerns as staff with that, is that the current setbacks are under state law. So there are properties within that already setback that are not going to be able to shoot fireworks or smoke on the property. If we go beyond that, we would be kind of jumping into something that we're prohibiting adjacent landowners from utilizing their property for
Sure.
what they can. So we could have some constitutional issues there, so.
Yeah.
We do have, staff would have concerns with those ones, but the annual review of it, that'd be acceptable as a condition,
Okay.
so.
I guess I just think in these situations, to just pass them forever when we have some unknowns. I sure don't think when we've done it, it sure hasn't hurt anything to maybe take a look at it again next year. And so I guess I'd like to move to add a 8th condition, that we would review this again next year.
I would second that.
all right, Scott and Boots, and is to review within 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, before we move any farther, then we will make we have a motion, a second on the alternate or adding condition. So we'll vote on that, and then we'll go back and vote on the entire thing.
Correct. Yep.
All right, any more discussion on Commissioner Scott's amendment? All right, seeing none, now we'll call roll call. Commissioner Moser,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling's a yes. All right, now we are to the original amended. Any further discussion on that?
Mr. Chair, the only thing I would say is, after Mr. Brown explained that adding the conditions that Lennox is requesting, we run into some other issues. So with that explanation, I wouldn't support adding those 2 conditions. I think we'll be just fine.
I'll say some of my concerns are the water coverage. But I know Prosper next door, they said they can use theirs, and they do have a hydrant, so that
Yep.
gets that a lot closer for me. My one setback is actually the traffic, which is good for business, is bad for people on a 2-lane road stopping and going and stopping and going. So, and they probably won't have sales during rush hour, rush minute, and they're in Lennox. But, we'll have it during the day when everyone's out driving with their families and whatnot, so. I think everything else has been addressed on my end. Any additional comments, anyone? All right, we'll do roll call. Commissioner Moser,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeter,
Yes.
Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. All right,
Have a good night.
good luck.
Thank you.
Get them to bed, it's raining out. All right, with that, Mr. Brown, is there any new business?
Other business.
Mr. Brown, do we have other business?
Yeah.
Yeah, it says right other right on it.
You just want to go home.
Okay, so this next item is under other business, and I put it under other business because, this isn't, the board's been working on a draft amendment for building eligibility transfers. And so the recommendation is that you forward that to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners will then send it back to us on a remand, and at that time, we'll schedule a public hearing, so it'll be a true public hearing where we'll take comments for and against, and then you'll actually vote to give a recommendation to send it back, the document or the amendment. But tonight, it'll be a continuation of the discussions that you've had previously. You're allowing the public to input on this, which is good because it allows us to have dialogue with the public as opposed to a true public hearing with it. But just, I'll briefly go through it real quick because I've done this probably 3-4 times now. But within the zoning ordinance, and again, in 1995, Lincoln County created density zoning, which allowed, prior to that, all you had to have was an acre and you could get a building permit from the county. But then in 1995, they created density zoning, which essentially restricted or put a density requirement of housing in the county. And essentially, it's 1 per quarter, but we also have lots of records. So if you platted prior to 1995, October of 1995, you had an additional eligibility. So that's why a lot of people say, well, there's more than 4 on the 160, but those were platted lots prior to that. The ordinance also allows you to transfer those building eligibilities off of that particular quarter, a lot of record. Currently, the requirement is that it has to be contiguous or the same ownership. Contiguous means touching, same ownership would mean same name, whether it be an LLC or a name or whatever is associated with it. And then there's also a requirement that it has to be an acre in size, but the board could increase that based on some soil conditions. And then there also is a requirement that we have a right to farm notice covenant. That's any house that's built in the agricultural zoning district has to file a right to farm notice covenant prior to issuance of a building permit. And so the current draft would be, as shown, would be is that we'd be removing the same ownership requirement, and then we'd just be adding or kind of consolidating the suitability of the soil compared to just saying that it has to be in conformance with the requirements for construction of a single-family dwelling. And so kind of, again, this has been on the books since 1995, or an ordinance or a law of the county. It's good that we review this. I know that the board has always had a lot of comments when we do the same ownership requirement, because what's happening now is the restriction is requiring that if the adjoining parcel, so typically what's happening is someone wants to build a house on a parcel that doesn't have a building eligibility, and so they're obtaining a building eligibility from someone else. They've reached an agreement on how they're going to do that. There's no requirement of what the cost is from the county perspective, but then in order to get to the point where it's the same ownership, typically then the person that has the building eligibility is a quitclaim deed of an acre of land, and then they sell them that and the eligibility, and then that person comes to us with a conditional use permit, moves it to there. And so it works. I mean, it's a little clunky on the process. A lot of quitclaim deeds are filed that probably are unnecessarily. And then Commissioner Scott will point out that we also had allowed in the past people would plat it out property, do a formal transfer on it, and those types of things. And then those get recorded, as property transfers and sales, so that does have an impact overall on, I won't go on that route, but in assessments and taxes and all that kind of stuff. But really, we've got probably 3 or 4 of these going right now that we're working with landowners to do this. Both sides are willing parties to sell the properties, but now they gotta go through this clunky process, hire an attorney to draft up quitclaim deeds, draft up agreements that, well, if I do this quitclaim deed with you, are you gonna give it back to me? Because that's what happens too, is it's not a formal transfer of the property. They quitclaim deed the acre, we move the eligibility, and then they quitclaim deed the property back to it. So it doesn't become full ownership property. And so we have a tracking system, the department does, we know when there's conditional use, when they're moved to move. From our perspective and our experience, the same ownership requirement is something that should be looked at and should be updated. It does create a clunky process for people that have good intentions. We're right now working with 3 or 4 people that are just want to come back to the farm, but their family doesn't have eligibilities. So they got to work with a neighbor. The neighbors seem receptive to selling the eligibility, but now it's getting hung up in this idea that we got to hire an attorney and go through the process to quitclaim deed and do agreements and make sure all that stuff works out. But something that takes 2 months anyways, because we got to have an application, we got to go through the transfer process. We've been dealing with these 3 or 4 since I'd say 3-4 months now, just in that process of it. So it's good. I mean, with laws, I mean, you should always take a look at them and fix what's the problem. And I would definitely say from a staff perspective that that's problematic with the same ownership on the requirement there. So with that, I'll stop my rambling and turn it back to you, Mr. Chair, and answer any questions. Otherwise, again, staff would request that you recommend the Board of Commissioners to take a look at this amendment and remand it back to you. So,
All right, thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions for staff on this item we've been working on?
okay, thank you.
All right. Well, now we'll take public input. This is different than public comment, where public says one word and we don't answer. But public input, we can talk back and forth and ask questions and, have a good conversation about this. We'll do that for a little while, then we'll move on to our next item. So,
Yep.
Yeah, anyone has anything to say? Yes, sir.
So I'd like to see something brought different to the commissioners. Anthony James Ventura, 47763 292nd Street, Hudson, South Dakota, 57034. Good night, good to see you. So this is a different idea, different plan. It matches other land use options in the agricultural district. So if you have 5 acres of land and you buy a housing eligibility from a landowner that already has one, or able to transfer you should be able to transfer it anywhere in Lincoln County, or pay a given dollar amount by the county, and the county will sell them, for example, a housing eligibility would be $750,000. You can build anywhere in the county on a 5-acre site, no planning and zoning required. If you have a 20-acre site, you could buy housing eligibility from a landowner that already has one, be able to transfer it anywhere in the county, and go to Lincoln County on a given dollar amount set by the county, who will sell them a housing eligibility. For example, $500,000 to build anywhere in the county on a 20-acre site, no planning and zoning required. If you wanted to add more houses, you would just pay the same amount or do a transfer. It can expand exponentially. It's the same thing we currently allow special interest groups in Lincoln County Ag District to expand exponentially per Lincoln County zoning. It would fix our zoning issue. A special interest group can build other things in the area that have nothing to do with regular ag. Then they change and alter the appearance of the land forever and deteriorate our roads infrastructure. But this concept would give property rights equal to special interest groups and landowners. It would give them the right to a 5-acre parcel to expand exponentially without hardly any constraints for a reason, as long as it meets certain criteria in Lincoln County. Currently, if you have 40 acres of land, you're considered ag in Lincoln County. I believe we should change that with Lincoln County Commissioners, go to 20-acre parcels. And so if you bought a house with 20 acres, you'd be considered ag, just like the farm field next door. Let's make it equal, equitable, and fair. So if you had 20 acres of land, it would be considered A1 ag with the tax breaks that ag has right now. This is a property rights issue. It would get 20-acre landowners a tax reduction in the ag district, which benefits Lincoln County development as it brings growth into all areas. It would be fair taxation if you own 20 acres, as it equalizes the tax forming in the ag district. The reduction of taxes levels the playing field for all landowners. The benefits would give money back to the landowners for reinvestment in Lincoln County for growing and enhancing our community. At present, when other states and countries bring in a project, light up a project that looks like a sports stadium 24/7, 365 a year, and the noise from operation, including trucking and other transportation or operations, dramatically change the current neighborhood ambience, you are overloading the system, past the point of ability for everybody else to have safe roads, quiet, peaceful, and safe development. This is not equal application of the law. Currently, planning and zoning states they have regulations, but there's almost no way to enforce them. So let's make it an equal playing field. So how will Lincoln County prosper? It will be able to sell housing abilities, for example, $500,000 to $750,000. You can either buy from a landowner, or you can go to the county and buy one. Either way, it benefits the community. It's high time that we recognize property rights as the most valuable thing in Lincoln County, not the county commission or planning board. Landowners won the last election. I think we really have to be seriously looking at that. Special interest groups or corporations do not vote in this area. Our county should recognize and respect the landowners in Lincoln County and make their wishes and changes. Constitutional rights must be fairly balanced and applied consistently across all land uses. It needs to be understood that landowners that do have housing eligibility should have the right to do what they want with them. This helps Lincoln County grow into a smart development area and brings people into their schools, churches, into their community, instead of bringing in foreign and out-of-state interest groups, giving those entities the right to build on a 5 or 20 acre parcel and take all their money with no reinvestment to economic development to help our community, ruining our road system and other infrastructure, and driving our resources and their profits into other states and countries. It's not a smart business for Lincoln County. Please change. So I think if you send something to the commissioners, send an option like this, send an option like that. Let the commissioners decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to discuss or talk about future ideas or new ideas or?
Rodney Miles, 27530 470th Avenue, Lenox. I was here last month and I kind of like that idea of Tony's as far as a 20 acre qualification for ag ground and stuff moving. My biggest concern is, again, townships losing revenue. And I would propose to still limit it to a hard border of within the township that eligibilities can be moved. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the time there's undesirable land, whether it's from water or there's more desirable land that's along paved roads or go farther north into a township and stuff. And this isn't moving a building eligibility from the southernmost townships to the northern borders. It's within the townships. And last month, there was some concerns about everything from generational decisions, whether, grandma and grandpa sold the eligibilities off and a grandchild wanted to come back and there was no eligibilities. Well, that can be kind of reversed to where if grandma or grandpa have health problems and they basically need to cover medical bills or an extended stay at a nursing home, they could sell those eligibilities and possibly save from having to sell the farm to cover them. And there's nothing that I could see in this ordinance that if a grandma or grandpa did sell off those eligibilities, that a grandchild couldn't come back and purchase an eligibility from somebody else and put it back on grandpa's farm because the farm's still there and it didn't have to be sold. And we heard about the density thing and stuff, and there might be one or two of you that could remember driving into Sioux Falls 60 years ago down Minnesota Avenue, and you had the Lakeside Dairy Farm where the cows actually were milked up on top of the hill. And then you had Rich Brothers Fireworks down below the hill, and nothing until Fred Larson John Deere at 41st Street. And it took about 40 years before we saw any real growth going up in that area, but in the last 20, we've seen a lot of growth. Now, will that continue? I can't predict what the inflation's gonna do, or, the economy, or, even AI coming in trying to push for taking jobs. People need jobs to be able to afford to buy a home. There's concerns about how do we regulate whether a property owner has property in one township and adjoining land in the other and wants to move a eligibility over there. I think if we leave it at a hard border within the township only, that'll avoid all conflicts. That property owner has the same exact privilege as anybody else. He can go into that other township, look for somebody that wants to sell him an eligibility, put it on that ground, and he could sell one of his if he's got extras or something. And it takes care of all that monkey business of, well, we did it for one, we have to do it for another. And then there was a comment, what else? Oh, as far as investments go, and people buying these up and basically using them for investments and stuff. And in '95, when the county did this, they created an asset. And the asset is basically based on the value of what that person, as a buyer and a seller, determines that asset is worth. It's a free market, except for there's no middleman involved, which is kind of nice for a change. But I don't think it's going to change valuation whatsoever, as far as maybe you'll see a little bit more of a price increase if you're in the northern townships. But I don't think it's going to change a thing for the rest of the townships in the county. I think it's all going to come down to what's supply and demand, what the buyer and what the seller determine the worth of it is, and then they agree on, price. And I guess lastly, I'll just say, earlier tonight, we all put our hands over our hearts and said the Pledge of Allegiance. And that last line from that, for liberty and justice for all. Liberty is usually associated with freedom, but the actual definition of liberty is freedom to act, think, and live according to one's own choice, without arbitration or unreasonable interference. And by keeping this adjoining thing, I believe that's unreasonable interference, to where basically one person might have somebody that wants to buy one, but if you're in an undesirable area, or you don't have somebody next door that wants to spend some money, that's picking and choosing the winners and losers again. So I'd really like to see that expanded to the townships, so that basically the money stays in the township. And if growth doesn't continue like this, maybe, it's a way to improve the tax base for both the township and the county by creating more opportunity to move these around to where people can actually pick and choose where they want to put them and stuff. So I'd like to see you guys take it into consideration, but thanks again for the input and giving us the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you much. All right, yes.
Good evening, Sarah Stever, 46850, 276th Street, Lenox. Not quite sure I understand all of what Tony said, but I do think it's worth exploring and kind of an interesting thought. I think one of the challenges in agriculture, and we don't necessarily see it as much close to Sioux Falls, is just what consolidation is doing to our small towns and communities. The fewer farmers that we have, the fewer small-town volunteer fire departments are supported. It's harder to keep a main street open, it's harder to field a softball team in a church and all those things, a school. And we know what happens to a small town when they lose their school. So just in thinking about some flexibility and balancing that with property rights ownership, I think it's worth exploring. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right. Commissioners or public, any more thoughts on this?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
we've had some pretty good ideas brought forward here. I think Tony's got some good points. I still revert back to the one thing that I get nervous about, being able to move them wherever in the county. A bunch of south ones go north and then have to kind of recalibrate that if possible down the road. So if it could stay within the township, that would be kind of nice. Like I say, I just get nervous that obviously as the north side of the county gets more the way it is and the south side will stay more agricultural, I'd hate to see all those leave the south side and go to the north side if we can find some kind of compromise to make that work.
All right, so we have what's been written here in front of us, and we worked about, I don't know, this is our third public input on this one, third or fourth, yeah. So I guess what the next step is we would just recommend sending it to the Board of Commissioners, and they'd review it, and then if they like it, they'll send it back to us, and then we'll do a full public comment and the whole actual deal. So before we send it to the Board of Commissioners, is there any changes anyone wants to make or based on tonight's thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So would there be anything wrong with sending two, as Mr. Ventura suggested, and let it be debated at the commission level? One being as is, just removing same ownership, leaving contiguous, and the other one, I like Mr. Miles's idea of if we were gonna take the contiguous away, let's maybe start by using the township as a boundary. Is there a way I'm sure we can.
I'm sure we can.
Can we send both and continue to let the residents have their debate at the commission level?
I
wouldn't be opposed
honestly
to
don't
that.
see an issue with that.
Is that all right, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, whoever you guys want.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, still no decisions are being made, nothing's stamped, so these are just still
They're
recommendations.
just recommendations,
Yeah.
and, I mean, I think that from what I hear from you guys and what goes through my head is I could probably go either way, maybe, and so.
Not set one way or another.
I'm not set one way or the other tonight, and so I'd like to continue to explore that option of,
I really like that idea.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown might educate us.
I was thinking how we would draft this, you could just send it up and then have options.
yeah,
So the first option would be this, the second option would be is taking away contiguous and same ownership, but then restricting it just within the township.
Right.
Can't exceed the township. And then the third thing I see is really, Mr. Ventura's thoughts on kind of what I call a lottery process where you could buy additional eligibilities. I don't think that'd be a part of this amendment, but maybe a separate thing that we would propose. But you could put that as a third recommendation, that take a look at doing some type of lottery system for additional eligibilities. Or some type of, density bonus would be essentially what it is. So,
personally, myself, I'd like to think on that one quite a bit more before
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
done.
and you can always recommend that later, too.
Yeah, we can-
Yep.
yeah, it's just,
But maybe let's start, I'd be real comfortable with that, starting with that and.
Okay,
and
two
let-
options.
Those
yeah.
two.
You guys are all,
Continue with the
Yes.
debate, continue with the discussion.
so just clarify that with your vote and then just go with that, so. And then we could always come back with there's other jurisdictions that have done a density bonus type thing where the county would auction it off or do some type of thing like that. You just run into competition with with private people though, you
Yeah.
know, so.
The one other thing, and just to clarify, Toby, when we transfer an eligibility, it is assigned to a parcel, correct?
Correct.
Yep. So we would, any transfers, that isn't anything we have to add verbiage, that it has to be assigned to a parcel, a
Correct.
platted parcel.
Correct.
Yep.
And I should say, the county already does it, but starting July 1st, we have to notify every township that's applicable with their application. So the townships would be notified if there was one that was transferring a township. But it's not frequent that we have one, but periodically someone would own property that's adjoining under the ordinance that would be in separate townships.
Yeah.
So that's, potential issue, but yeah. Okay.
all right. I really like this process.
I do too.
All
I have a
right,
question.
next.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, is that good?
Theoretically, could you, you don't have to develop them, if you just, could you collect eligibilities?
On a parcel, yes.
Just collect, just amass them? You don't have to like build, actually use them, but you could just have them.
No, and that's actually happened at a micro scale
Okay.
already, yeah. Yeah, we've had certain situations where, you know, for whatever the reason, the landowner wants to take the eligibilities from this parcel and move them over here with no intentions of doing anything with them, but just down the road thinks that would be a better spot for them, so.
Well, it could be a good investment.
Could be.
All right, with that, we will move on to our next ordinance discussion we've been working on.
Do we have to make a motion on this to send it to the,
I don't think we need to make a motion, do we? Oh, we do, okay. All right, I'll ask for a motion to move this forward to the Board of Commissioners with the two options.
I'll make that motion, Boots, with the two options.
Second, Scott.
All right, I will do additional discussion. I think we've done that, but, all right, I'll do roll call. Commissioner Moser,
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeter,
yes,
Commissioner Boots,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling is also a yes. All right.
Okay, next item, same process, is that requesting that you would send this potential draft to the Board of Commissioners for potential remand back to you. At that time, you'll have a public hearing, take public input, and send it back to the Board of Commissioners. So what this is this would be creating a new conditional use permit for non-accessory solar energy systems. Again, in the county, we currently permit accessory solar energy systems as an accessory structure. And so with this, there would be regulations for non-accessory solar systems, 750 feet from a residence. They have to do screening or berming on the footprint. And then that any lines within the interior portion of the operational area would have to be buried, and then foundation posts would be driving in the post that connects the solar systems to it. Decommissioning plan, and so for the decommissioning plan, it would be in the name of the landowner. So if there's ever a default and there's not enough money, it would be typically how the county engages with landowners if there's some type of a nuisance on the property or some type of an incorrect zoning process. Would be the owner's responsible, the person that owns the land who's currently has a lease with the solar company. If that escrow amount is not sufficient to cover it, then the county would clean it up, but then we would assess the property owner for that, or if the property owner would clean it up and stuff like that. So kind of moving forward, we typically don't do decommissioning in the name of the county. We would typically do it in the name of the landowner, because ultimately it's the landowner's responsibility for the cleanup of the property. They're the ones that are engaging in the lease with the applicant. They should be the ones to make sure that they're going to have adequate financial security to make sure that it can be decommissioned. And then the only other thing would be, we added a density requirement, so you can't have more than systems within 2,500 feet of an existing system, and then identified what a solar energy system definition would be. And again, so the idea is that we'd make this a conditional use in the A1 agricultural zoning district. Currently, it could be considered to be a permissive use within the A1 agricultural zoning district. So we believe the public's best interest would be to have this as a conditional use within the A1 agricultural zoning district. With that, turn it back to you and answer your questions that you have for staff at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioners, any questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown, just a clarification for everybody. The setback of 750 feet that's currently in this one is a hard setback with no waivers, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so same as last time, just public input, back and forth. And anyone have anything they want to discuss on this solar ordinance? Hello.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Bethany Eric, and 46747 291st Street, Centerville. I'm looking at all of this, and it's
Could you state your name a lot?
Bethany Eric. Yeah. When we look at this conditional use permit, it's missing very valuable data points that are on every other conditional, use permit. It's missing everything that we use from wind and CAFOs, and I wrote it down here. You don't have downward lighting. On wind, there's an electromagnetic interference. So let's say these things are whopping out a lot of power and they zap your, internet signal or whatever, electromagnetic interference. And then the common sense ones, signs, noise, because these solar entities can create requirement for diesel generators that exceed 45 decibels. In our wind ordinance in Lincoln County, I pulled it up here, it's not to exceed 45 decibels at the property line. So, I just think those are common sense to pull in from our other conditional use permits. It's not really differing at all if this is the wind ordinance. So could you guys make a motion tonight to add some of the other protections in there? The final protection I would ask for is when we're looking at a hard 750 feet setback, you brought that up. I wonder if we could scale it similar to a CAFO, where based on the size of the number of panels, if they're going to put 160 acres of panels, is 750 feet really far enough? Could we scale it according to the size of the solar project, that we extend our setbacks in a metered motion? So if somebody took up a whole entire quarter of land and then somebody has a building eligibility right next door, they're not really going to want to build there. So if we could scale setbacks according to the size of the solar project, and I believe our state has limited the total number of kilowatts or something, but let's just be reasonable and let's pull in from the other court ordinances here in Lincoln County to protect residents that might be nearby one of these projects. So again, that was lighting, signs, noise not to exceed 45 decibels, electromagnetic or electrical interference. If we find out that they've got a ground fault issue, let's protect our residents. Let's just put it in the conditional use permit that you guys have the opportunity to stomp on them and say stop. If they step outside of bounds. What I've seen in other states is the fact that a lot of these solar entities will build it. One will build it and then another will buy it, and they won't give a rip as to whether or not these are efficient, safe, or well-maintained. That's what's happening in friends of mine in Minnesota and Nebraska. So we need to put also, the last suggestion would be that we put in a continuous, the conditional use permit along with the sale of the property, they have to maintain to that standard, because quick as they build it, they'll flip it. That's what I've seen in other states, so. But thanks for listening, thanks for taking into consideration, let's model the solar after the other conditional use permits that we have in the county. That'd be good common sense to protect landowners nearby. So, any questions for me? Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, Sarah Stever, 46850, 276th Street in Lenox. I'm just here to remind you one more time of the Virginia Tech study that showed the impact of what a solar farm can do to property values. So this study took 8.8 million real estate sale transactions next to 3,699 solar farms and tracked them over a 15-year period. So this is a very robust study. They figured that if you were within 3 miles of a utility-scale solar farm, your property values only dropped 4.8%. Only. If you were within a half a mile, the drop in value was 7 to 8%. So considering the fact that property values typically go up in Lincoln County, for them to drop at all is quite a swing. The study also studied ag land, and that had an inverse effect. It actually raised the value of ag land almost 20%, which is exciting until you're a farmer trying to expand your operation or bring your kids back to the farm. So because of those land values, and especially the particular one that was a 3-mile radius, my request is that we have a neighborhood notification request that is paid for by the company that notifies everyone within 3 miles of that solar farm so that they can be part of that conditional use permit process. I think the public being able to have a say when it's going to impact them could be very important. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, any other discussion, anybody? All right, well, we were working on this one. I'm just talking out loud, staring at you, no reason.
Are you ready for us to talk yet?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, anyone, yeah,
Mr. Chair.
yeah, anyone, yeah.
And Bethany, thanks for bringing that up, because I was going to speak to the setback anyhow. And you gave me, put a different twist onto my idea, so I like it. Just so everybody understands, the difference between a wavered setback and a hard setback is, if we have a setback with a waiver, it means that, the applicant might not meet it because there's a dwelling or something, whatever the setback is from, in that distance. But as long as they get a waiver and negotiate with that person, then they meet the setback. In this scenario, they wouldn't have that option. So I guess what I was originally gonna do is I would like to see it be at least what the minimum of our minimum CAFO setback is, which is 1320 with a waiver. But as you're gonna hear me talk about here next, with CAFOs and some of the things that we found with that, when you look at those ordinances, is the size setback, to me, seems to make sense. But when we've talked about that in the past, the resistance comes is like, well, how do you measure the size? Because, is it kilowatts, or Jerry's the electrical person, I don't understand all the lingo, and apparently that can change. Some solar farms are more powerful than other ones and this and that. But just in my simple little brain sitting here is, I think it's real easy to measure it in acres, right? So, because that's what we're gonna see. We're not gonna see kilowatts or power, we're gonna see acres. And if you took, and here now I'm just spitballing a bit, but the only solar farm that we have had presented in front of us has been roughly, it was 75, 80 acres, something like that. And if you went with this 750-foot hard setback, it makes even math to 10 feet per acre. That would make a quarter section 1,600 feet, a half section, so on and so forth. Not saying that's the number, but it's a place to start. I think the easier thing for that is, it makes the math problem a lot easier for the applicant, for staff, and for the commission in the future, is if we decide on that, whatever that number is, it's just an easy math problem. You plug it in, you want to build 160 acres of solar panels, times this number, that's your setback. Simple. So I like that idea. And I think that that's something that would be fair. It's also, the thing about it is it's not restrictive, right? Like, you could make it as big as you want as long as you meet the setback or get the waivers signed to meet the setback. So anyway, I guess that's where I'm thinking. Something has to be done with the setback. I'm not in favor, me personally, just a 750-foot hard setback for any size. It's half the distance, or almost half the distance of anything we do with CAFOs, so I think it's gotta mimic that somewhat.
So you're thinking based by acres and include the waiver then?
Yeah, I think you gotta have the waiver so that otherwise it becomes too restrictive, right? I mean, then if you don't have the beautiful thing I think about the waiver process is it just allows it creates an environment where the applicant and the already existent tenants or landowners or residents, it forces them to have to come to a place where they need to negotiate. And I think that's good practice. Or you size your project down to where you don't have to negotiate with somebody, one or the other. But I don't think it's right that we just allow somebody to come in and build a massive project that's 2 foot outside the setback and the whole neighborhood has to deal with it and never got a say in the process.
What was your calculation again? How many per acre? How many feet?
Again, a total spitball, but just based off the last one, the only one we've heard was the one by Lennox, and that was a planned development deal. But that was roughly 75, 80 acres it was gonna take up. And if we just started with this minimum 750 feet, it'd be 10 foot an acre. It'd be a nice round number, I guess.
So expanding on that a little bit, that last one, they owned 80 acres, but they're only going to use 60.
Mhm.
Would you base it on the entire property or what they've been permitted for? If they need a bunch of wetland mitigation and that, does that
Sure, yeah.
include in that? I don't know the answer here, I'm
I don't know.
throwing the words out there.
Yeah, I suppose it would have to be from, the way we do it with CAFOs is the setback isn't from the property line, it's from the livestock facility itself. So I don't see why we would have to treat it any differently. I think you could just make the setback from where the structures are. So if they have 80 acres and the north 20 acres of it is gonna be berms, wetlands, and trees, I don't see why there's gotta be a setback from that.
Yeah, that makes sense and is consistent with how we do CAFOs. and-
Yep. Just my thoughts.
Is there a risk with any kind of waivered setback where solar farm comes in, negotiates, get the waiver, sets up a project, and then further expands? Is that create any issues? How would that work?
So, can I speak to that?
Please, yeah.
So the way we handle those conditional use permits, this isn't how it's always maybe been in the past, but the way it's been currently since I've been here, is that the permit has a cap. And so that's what you're permitted to do. So for example, if you're permitted to build 80 acres of solar panels and you go get your waivers and now you wanna turn the next 80 into it, we can't do that without without a new conditional use permit, so then you gotta go through that process. And I suppose if you do that, then you gotta increase your setback. Just the same as how we would handle a livestock operation right now.
Toby, any thoughts on this adjustment?
An additional thought on that, though, because again, a wavered setback, but then they have to go to that, if they have negotiated with their neighbors, got an approval with those neighbors, but they signed up for 80-acre one, and they want to do a 161, would they be required to go back to that same neighbor and get a waiver, or do they consider themselves good and they'll just go ahead with the project, or I guess I don't know.
I think they would have to, you would have to get a waiver for the expansion.
I think the expansion would be like a whole nother process.
It's a whole nother conditional use
Yeah.
permit.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, with that, I mean, do we want to bring it back next month and do some more research on what that
Yeah,
foot per acre is or
Yeah.
something like that, you know, and
I guess I'd be okay, I think that would be good and gives everybody some time to visit about that and see if that's an idea that maybe could make some sense moving forward.
I agree, we don't have any in the hopper and we're not in a hurry. We want to
Not
do
in
it
a hurry.
right as
Nope.
well as we can.
We'll give as many people much input as possible,
Yep.
so, yeah.
I'm good with that. A little more discussion and figure that out.
So we could ask Toby to write it up as we discussed today, and next month we can work on just plugging in that number.
Yep. Yeah,
I'm good with
could always
that.
look at the option, right?
Yeah, we look at it again and give public a chance to think about more on that and maybe bring some more great ideas to us.
Yep.
All right? Guys ready to move on to the next one?
Go.
Oh, please, yes.
Yeah.
Bethany, Eric, thank you for recognizing me again. Could we also ask Toby to add in what is around for lighting, signage, and noise from the other projects too? Could we just have that added in so that next month when we look at that, it's already in there? Modeled after the wind and CAFOs. So signage, lighting, and noise, that'd be awesome.
I
Thanks.
agree.
Yeah, for discussion. yeah.
For discussion, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we'll have to look at what, I think lighting is going to be easier, just down lighting, signage, yeah. DBs, we probably have to research what that good number would be.
Yeah, I mean, we can add that stuff. Again, from a staff perspective though, the public wants us to be a conditional use permit, the number one thing. So there's, potentially, it's a permissive use currently. So the quicker we move some of that stuff, so.
Yep.
But, yeah, I'll get that draft. We can put that together for next month, so.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yep.
Can we come down there, Toby?
Yeah. All right. We got it set up for you.
Eric Scott, 47881 287th Street, Canton. Kind of wanted to say that. So as we've updated our comprehensive plan, right? And one of the things that the comprehensive plan has recommended is that a large part of the county has been identified as agriculture and to be preserved as agriculture. The one thing that we, as a planning commission board or the county commission, has a big influence on in agriculture is livestock. And so as the livestock representative, that is why I'm the at-large member, is we have to have one person that's in the county that's involved in animal agriculture to sit on this board. Since the new comprehensive plan has been updated. One of the things I've been doing is really studying our current livestock ordinances and where they're at, and looking for places where I think that there's inconsistencies, there's places where we can improve, things that look very 1995-ish, because that's when this was put in place. We're 31 years down the road from when the original ordinances were met and put in. And so I just want to share with you guys just a few things in starting of where I want to start this discussion, and then we'll hear from the public and everybody else, and we can go from there. The first thing we'll do is we'll review 154.383, and then a short, I just want to have a few things to point out, 154.250. And then I'm going to go through a quick explanation of what animal units or animal unit equivalent is. And then we'll go through our classifications, Class A, B, C, D, and the inconsistencies that I see there. And then our current setback or separation distances and the inconsistencies. And then a few things about livestock operations and housing. So, in most of our conditional use processes, I think all of them, Toby refers to 154.383, and that's our responsibility as a planning commission, and what we're to take into consideration when presented with a conditional use permit. And as you can see in number C, or letter C, at the end it says that the effects of noise, odor, traffic, air, water pollution, and other negative factors shall be eliminated or controlled through the use of screening, setbacks, and orientations, okay? As we, we understand, and that's, we do that on a pretty regular basis. Here's the start of 154.250. You can, if you want to go to the website, you can read through all this. But the thing that I want to point out is that in section F of 154.250, it says that on minimum separation distances, and I want everybody to understand that separation distances, setbacks, all the same terminology. I think that's one thing that, as you read through at least our CAFO ordinances, there's a lot of, the terminology isn't consistent. And so minimum separation distances, the facility shall be sited no closer than those distances indicated in the division F, 2 below, which I'll show that chart too. But this is the important part. I think that we don't well, it's the first place I see where there's huge potential for inconsistencies in the setbacks. And it says these setbacks are minimum standards, which I think is important terminology, that they may be increased by the Planning Commission during the conditional use permit issuance process due to concerns or circumstances unique to a specific concentrated animal feeding operation permit application. And when you go back to 154.383, that specifically tells us that we have to do this, right? And so, again, the ordinance is telling us that our lever to use is setbacks, right? So it's told us that that's our responsibility in the conditional use process. It again tells us that the recommended setbacks are minimum standards, but us as a planning commission need to look at those setbacks, and if for any reason we deem necessary, we should increase or have that ability to, right? But I think that's important for the public to understand that when we look at a setback chart, those are minimum standards, but the Planning Commission, unfortunately, Mr. Schmidt, not the County Commission, but the Planning Commission has the authority to increase or adjust that setback. So just, if you dive through the whole section, you look at all the requirements for a CAFO, it basically setback or separation distance is the main lever, okay? And in my examples, I'm only using, to dwellings. There's also a whole list of separation distances or setbacks from other things, and we can surely get into that. But I started with dwellings just because that's where I seen a glaring inconsistency. And so I think that us as a board, at least to start with, since that's the lever that we have to use, and it's the authority that's given to us, I think that that's where we should concentrate our time on. Most of the other requirements for CAFOs are pretty much regulated by state, manure management, water quality, state permitting, all those things that trumps us. And so I don't know that we probably, I'm not saying we can't take it into consideration, but I don't know that we have a whole bunch of authority to deal with it anyway. So this is our current class chart. And basically, what you can see is this is per head, I guess, but that number is derived from animal unit equivalents. And I think this is also a place where we get, I wouldn't say it's inconsistent because the math's correct, but it gets inconsistent when we talk about it. Because when we talk about 2,000 head, when we talk to somebody like maybe Mr. Jungling that isn't involved in animal agriculture, and we talk about 2,000 head of 800 pounds beef steers, or 2,000 head of dairy cows, or 2,000 head of, you probably would know the difference between a 55-pound feeder pig. But, so I think one of the things that would be, at least for my presentation, I'm not saying that we have to go this way, but I think cleaning things up and just talking about animal unit equivalents instead of head of beef cattle, head of dairy cattle, head of pigs, head of chicken, so on and so forth. So what I did do is I just made a simple chart. And animal unit equivalents is, these are numbers I came up with. This is a pretty standard conversion that's used at the university level, at the federal level, at the state level for manure management and so forth. So just to give you a rough idea, if you just consider a beef cow or a steer or a feeder calf, and these are the definitions I took out of our ordinance currently. So just figure that as a one, right? So if you could have, if you had a permit for 1,000 head animal unit, you could have 1,000 beef cows. But if you had, it would equate then to 1,400 head of mature dairy cows, and then pigs are smaller, and so on and so forth. So from here on out, I'm just going to talk in animal units versus head of cattle, head of pigs, so on and so forth, okay? So here's our current classes, class A, B, C, D. What you'll see, the first inconsistency that I found is class B, C, and D has a minimum standard setback, recommended minimum standard, okay? They also have a minimum animal unit equivalent, and they have a maximum animal unit equivalent. And then we get to class A, we have a minimum standard setback, and we have a minimum animal unit equivalent, but then we have infinity to the top. There's no maximum, and I'm not saying there should be, but what happens then is we've got this range in class B, C, and D, let's just take class C, for example. Those are fairly common. So we've got this range of 500 to 999. So our animal unit range is 499, right? And we've got a 1,320 foot setback. So if you've got a 500 animal unit operation, your foot per animal unit setback is 2.64 feet. If you go to the max of that, your foot per animal unit setback is 1.32 feet. So for every animal unit in that class, if you have a 999, take that times, your setback has to be 1.32 feet, roughly. Well, where it has gotten So what, at least, it's not perfect, but at least there's bumpers within the Class B, C, and D, right? Where it gets interesting is in Class A then, is, okay, well, if our minimum setback is 3960 and our minimum animal unit equivalent is 2,000, well, what happens if we get a permit for 15,000 animal units? Do we still base that off the minimum standard? Well, maybe, maybe not. 154.250F gives us the authority to increase that setback, but then based on what? You see where I'm going with the gray in this? It's like, okay, now do we just start, now there's a way to do that, it's a math problem, I mean, we can divide it, say, all right, let's do the math here, and let's take, the minimum standard and so many feet per animal unit, and let's just take that times that. Well, we could do that, but that isn't staying consistent with the ordinance then, right? So we're basically legislating on the go, which we don't have the authority to do that. So then, really to stay consistent with the current ordinance, then we have to go in increments of a quarter mile. And it's like, okay, well, if you're 4, 5, 6 times the minimum standard, do we add 6/4 of a mile? I suppose you could argue that, right? But you see what I'm saying, is it leaves this gray area where it's open for interpretation, or you might just leave it the minimum setback, you know, I mean, so, but my point is in that infinity Class A ability, there's a lot of moving parts in there, and there stands to be a lot of inconsistency on how that setback is established. So here's a simpler way to look at it, and this is where I hope you guys start to see the real inconsistency. So basically what I did is I just took I took animal units, took the minimum standard setback, and just did the math, okay? So currently in Lincoln County, if you want a 200 animal unit CAFO, your setback per foot of animal unit is 6.6 feet. If you want a 10,000 head, and we're going to use the minimum standard, it's 0.4. Well, to me that's confusing, because at the very least I think that number should be the same. I surely don't think that the 200 head animal unit should have to have that much more of a requirement than anybody else, because what it tells us is we're telling the smaller producer that we're going to make it harder than it is for the larger one. And I'm not on the side of small, medium, or large. I think it's all good and it all has a place, but I do think it should have to be consistent. So if you look in the middle here, 1999, the math just comes out, it's 1.32 feet. So I'm not saying that this is the number that maybe even I agree with, or that I think we have to move with. I just picked a number in the middle just to show you what that would look like. And if we would go to something simpler, less confusing, where we already know what the definition of animal units are. If we as a county only had to argue about one number and set it, then all we have to do is an applicant comes in, says, I want to do this many animal units. Simple math, take that many animal units times that many feet. There's your standard setback, and away you go, right? We get rid of a lot of this gray area and these super big inconsistencies that we currently have. So I guess that's where when it comes to the classes and to the setbacks, that's where I see the biggest inconsistency in our whole ordinance, and I think that cleaning it up, at least starting there, where we clean up and we have one discussion about how many feet per animal unit do we need to have is a fair and workable setback? I think going forward then, the second thing that we could, have a discussion on is on this chart, you could draw a line through there somewhere and say above that line is a conditional use process, below that line, if you meet the setback, you're permitted, right? I don't think we need to have, me personally, somebody that wants to have a 250 head animal unit operation, I don't think they have to come here and do a conditional use process, personally. I do think if somebody wants to have a 20,000 animal unit operation, I think we should go through the conditional use process. Just that's my personal opinion. So the two things where I'd like to start the discussion is if other people would agree, is to discuss on setback as far as feet per animal unit, and then where could a potential divider line be where we go conditional use, not conditional use. Does that make sense? Okay. Lastly, and I'll just touch on this, you guys have heard me bring this up probably more than you want, but I'm going to remind everybody again that we are on an uneven playing field when it comes to livestock operations. This is another inconsistent thing I'm just going to bring up. We're on an uneven playing field with livestock operations and houses in Lincoln County. Somebody can come across the road from anybody and build a house tomorrow, and the neighboring landowner or resident has no idea that it's happened until it's happened. A livestock operator can't do the same thing. The resident next to them has different protections than the livestock operator has against going back and forth. And I hear, sitting up there a lot, that, well, housing eligibilities, my acreage, this and that. I understand those are all valuable, but the potential to develop and expand a livestock operation is extremely valuable too. And if you currently have a piece of land in Lincoln County that would meet the current setbacks, and you might be planning on expanding for your family, right? There's a lot of young people here tonight that are interested in animal agriculture. And maybe they want to get into it, and they've made a purchase of a piece of land, getting in position to do that, and boom, housing eligibility across the road gets sold, somebody builds a house, changes their plan forever. I mean, there's no way of protecting that, right? Like, they're done without the waiver process and the thing that we do. And so I do think that in this whole discussion process, we have to come to something that's fair there. And one of the things, I don't know that I have the answer. I have some ideas, and I'm sure there's people here that have lots of ideas too on both sides of that. The other thing, and I just put it up here because as I was talking to a livestock producer in Lincoln County last week, they actually brought up an interesting idea. Again, it's an idea, but I think it's one that's worth discussing. And it's somehow could we take primary residence and use that as a differentiation? So, example being, if your primary residence and you want to have a livestock operation there, versus wanting to have a livestock operation 10 miles from your primary residence, can you get some kind of easier going because it's your primary residence versus somewhere else? I don't know. But I thought it was an interesting enough idea to throw it out there. I don't know where to go with it from there. But does anybody have any questions before I go sit down?
I got a question.
Yeah.
For the state of South Dakota, like, what's the governing body that regulates, like, manure management and
Danner.
Danner?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just thinking out loud or whatever, I mean, would it make sense to have something that kind of mirrors the standards that are currently there too? So there's not like, I have to, you don't want stuff that doesn't match up at the state level that, you know.
Well, they don't have setbacks, say from dwellings. That's our responsibility. The state, you know, in each county, they're different. So, but like I said earlier, and I think that's one of the things, and Toby can speak to this too, is manure management plans, you know, your state permits, those things. We can't regulate those anyway at the county level, and so, but we do spend time, in my opinion, too much time talking about them, but that's a state issue, in my
Right.
opinion, so.
Yeah, I just didn't want to create a situation where like, you know, well, the state would permit it, but then,
Right.
there's like a lot of inconsistencies, which is what you're trying to avoid, right? You're trying to make it like an easier process. If someone just wants to, you know, I think it's kind of ridiculous that, you know, the setbacks for such a small operation are so massive, but then if you just get exit velocity and just have a big enough operation, it's, you know, there's nothing.
Yep.
That makes no sense to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good? I'll go
Yeah,
sit down and let other people talk.
All right,
Can we get this off of here, Toby, or?
So just thinking next steps, and maybe I'm going too far ahead. Do we want to form a side committee to looking at this? And, you know, all these different items and then bring that forward and then do the public input, or do both at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm game for whatever. I just think that, like I said, after I've looked at it, and hopefully you guys seen the same confusion and inconsistencies that I did, and there just has to be a better way to make it easier, and make it not so overwhelming for applicants, that they can move forward with things.
Well,
But what I would like to do, there's a lot of people here.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, we definitely want to take public input from
100%,
folks,
yeah.
so maybe we should do that first. Or, Mr. Brown, do you want to discuss anything, fill in the gaps?
No gaps, I guess, but from a staff perspective, you know, I think we can continue to do this way we've done the other amendments, just have public meetings, you know, because I think ultimately we want to come up with a draft, as opposed to a group comes up with a draft and then the public doesn't support that or there's not there. It's good to just, you know, because, you know, the CAFO regulations are probably the most critical thing in the A1 agricultural zoning district. Like Commissioner Scott said, I won't go a step further than he went, but it's a policy that was adopted by the board. You know, there's really no explanation why those numbers are where those numbers are. So I won't dispute them or say that there's discrepancies, but I'll say that they're policy. But maybe if we're moving towards the future, it'd be best to just make sure that we know why we have these setbacks. You know, I would point out that, you know, when I worked on the, you know, and I and Joan worked on the setbacks for wind, we found a definitive document from a third party, peer reviewed, that said this is the setback that becomes a critical setback. And I think that's probably where we need to go with some of this stuff too, is really have something pinpoint, because, you know, the routine questions that staff gets repeatedly every day is why, you know, why is this, that, or that and stuff, you know, and we'll say, well, it's because the policy, it was adopted, you know, it was sausage, that's how it came out of it. But, you know, I think transparency and all that other stuff, it's good that we'll go through this process. This ain't gonna be quick, you know, I mean, because there's lots of ideas that everyone has about how this should be. But overall, I think there's some things that we need to simplify, to make better. And, you know, on the top end, I hear repeatedly said that we don't have a cap, or we don't have the setback just infinitive, you know, but really, when we look back historically, of the CAFOs, Class A's that have been approved by the county, we deferred to the state. We said, you know, the state permit was required. And so with that defer, you know, the state really regulates the Class A's in Lincoln County. And they do, I mean, there's.
But not the setback.
Not from a dwelling, But
No.
the size of it, yeah, I mean, that's regulated by the state.
And you bring up a good point, Toby, and I think that's important, of the Class A, or if we go back to that, the 154, 250F, where it gives the planning commission the authority to increase a setback, to your knowledge, has that ever been used?
Yeah, I mean, it was,
When?
we had litigation on one of them, we used that to increase it. And then there was another time where, we moved it at the public hearing, the public wanted it moved. So we increased essentially the distance of the building construction. But in saying that, here's, I'll explain a little bit further, is if the board wanted to do that, they'd have to approve it to get that increased setback.
Yeah.
You can't deny it because it doesn't meet the setback that you came up with. So from a public perspective, it'd probably be better if you just denied it then, as opposed to increasing it based on an increased setback.
Well, I think that's yeah.
Yeah, and then, I'll point out that.
And again, that's my point, is just the discussion we're having right now is very inconsistent and gray, right? No. Well, I think there's a simpler way to make that.
Well, then I'll point out the real obvious one too, is that, so the Board of Commissioners gave the Planning Commission the authority to increase it, but they didn't give themselves the authority to increase it. And so typically on every CAFO, we would have, especially Class A, that would get appealed to Board of Commissioners. Well, they didn't give themselves the same authority to increase the setback at their level, so it's a unique perspective on it, but like anything, the ordinances need to be reviewed and we should take a look at it, but that's my sense on it. I would encourage you, though, we continue this in a public setting where we're looking at what drafts are the same we've done with these other two. I think it's not gonna be quick, but it's necessary at this stage in the county, so. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the biggest thing I see on this is obviously the foot step back, as you discussed, if there's someone young want to get into the trade or wants to start on their own, away from dad or whatnot, yeah, they have a lot harder time getting started, and we need ag, we need all this in our county, so, yeah, if we, just needs to be even for everyone. I think that's a great thing you brought up there, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. But
Anyone from the audience want to add to the conversation? Please and thank you.
Good evening, Jared Stearns, 47374 288th Street. I just want to first off say thank you. I came here last month asking for this to be on the agenda, so I appreciate the entire commission, Mr. Brown, for making sure that this discussion gets started. So last month, main concern I have is on Class A CAFOs, and as Commissioner Scott was explaining, there's no cap. So whether it's 2,000 animal units or 40,000 animal units, it's still that 3,960 foot is at 3/4 of a mile, which I think we can understand could create some issues. And looking at other counties, Union, Turner, McCook, and Yankton all have mechanisms in place built into their ordinances that as a CAFO grows, the setback gets longer. In Clay County, they have a cap as far as how big, from an animal unit perspective, a facility can be. Minnehaha pretty much matches Lincoln, so I would say that Lincoln and Minnehaha in kind of southeast South Dakota area are very much in the minority, and I would argue that Minnehaha really isn't a good comparison just given the population density that the two different counties see. Looking as far as what those mechanisms are, as far as how they increase the setback as the facility size grows. Yankton takes a very similar approach to what Commissioner Scott was presenting. It's a set distance per animal unit. They have it at 2.64 feet per animal unit with a cap at 1.5 miles, and they have a minimum in there as well. Union, Turner, and McCook, they take a little bit different approach. They have a minimum for their largest class of CAFO, and then similar to what I proposed last month, where what I proposed was an additional 100 feet added to the setback for each 500 animal units over 2,000. And so for example, for a 5,000 animal unit facility, it would be about an additional 600 feet added to that 3/4 of a mile. One thing, Commissioner Moser, that you mentioned as far as, state and how they're regulated. State, the largest class of, CAFO, I think it starts at 700 animal units. So it's a quite a bit different scale than what we have in the county. And just to close, I do think that this is an opportunity to strike a better balance between supporting growth and protecting quality of life. And I do think that, as Commissioner Scott mentioned, there's a lot of gray area. And taking a closer look at this, adjusting some of these things would alleviate the commission from having to make a lot of discretionary decisions in the future moving forward. So, thank you very much for the time. If you guys have any questions, I'm here. So,
Thanks.
thank you.
That's good info there, of what other counties do.
Yep.
Yep, 100%.
And they all doing some kind of incremental.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mason.
Mason Renly, 47494 284th Street. I'm a young farmer. We have a small cow-calf operation. I kind of like it a lot better that not have to go through a lot of rigmarole if I wanted to start a feeding operation on the north side of the ground that we've farmed for 5 generations, have to go and ask somebody for permission to use the same stuff that we already have sitting there, and have to deal with our neighbors that built right across the road 4 years ago, and we had 0 say. So we can't do what we've been doing for 6 generations now, and make a move in right across the road and have a say in it. So I really like the idea of changing the setbacks and making it more standard. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
Anthony Ventura, don't need to say the rest. So I got a question for you. Who owns the property you live on? You, right? If a confinement owner buys property, they own that property, correct? The one thing I've always had a problem with is the partial line should be like a dome. If you want to build a facility or anything else, you build it you measure from the parcel line back, not into the neighbor's property, and then ask the county to do a taking. That is illegal taking, it's trespass. It'd be like me going to your house at 3 o'clock in the morning, drinking a Mountain Dew and watching your TV. You wouldn't like that either, see? And so we have to equalize this. And I agree, I've talked to large confinement operations that want to come to Lincoln County, and there's no room because these numbers are way off. You can't build unlimited. And so we need to have a hard cap. And so maybe eliminating A completely off the list and saying 1,000 is our maximum is maybe an idea. Because if you draw where people own land and where they can build houses and where they can develop their own futures, just like the people adjacent, that's about the biggest we can get in Lincoln County. Because we're populated. But we do need farming, we do need ranching, we do need everything down here. But we need to do it in a smart development manner. And what we do right now is kind of like, whatever fits in a box, these 16 housing eligibilities don't matter, and we can do what we want. And so we have to fix the system. Thank you.
All right, any other ideas? Anybody?
I thought we'd have a lot more.
Don Blitzer, 47825 296th Street, Alcester. I guess I don't have any defining comments, but I think there's a delicate balance between rich farming communities that feed churches, schools, 4-H communities, and then big agriculture. It has been proven that families follow livestock, and where there's livestock, there's rich communities. But there's bigger livestock operations that maybe overpower that. And so I would highly encourage this delicate balance that we have, that these young families can graft into these communities, much like myself, and give us opportunities and keep our agriculture community healthy and vibrant. So, thank you.
Thanks, Dawn.
Landon Drumley, 47494 284th Street. I really appreciate you guys bringing this forward for discussion, and
as I own not very many cows. My dad, just kind of small and trying to grow. I do think it's a very important point being brought up. There's a difference in standard that you have to meet as being small and just trying to start out and make a living versus massive operations, and they have more capital to kind of abuse the system as well, versus, if you have this disproportional setback to your operation as a small guy, it's just one more big step to overcome, along with, always worried about you get no notice when just all of a sudden house shows up across the way and you have, 5 years of plans. You just throw on the burn heap, go try and find somewhere else for it. So I just think finding a balance and some fairness in that system is really important, because there is a place for all these different kinds of operations and houses and everything, but you just kind of have to make a balance for everybody. Thanks.
Thanks, Lyndon.
Harold Floyd, 48339, 29th Street, Fairview. Going back to Eric Scott's comments about feet per animal unit. When you figure out the Class A there, you're 2.5 miles away from anybody, anything. That's going to probably the next thing to impossible in Lincoln County. And the fellow before, they had the cap on the max minimum distance. I think that is a very necessary requirement, but even that, in my opinion, is too much. I think what the committee, whoever is in charge of deciding this, has to look at a map of Lincoln County, the southern part, see what the average housing distance is, how many places is actually available, that there could be a Class C even, and then go from there in determining the setback distance. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Floyd. Yeah, those are all options. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Harold.
Go ahead, bud.
Harold Floyd Jr., 48339, 289th Street, Fairview, Canton, South Dakota. So I went through the process a couple years ago, and one thing I found quite interesting is South Dakota State did a odor footprint for me, and that was quite a bit less than what you guys required as setback, so maybe that's something that would correlate with how many animal units are being there, because then the footprint is basically what affects you. Everybody had to be affected less than, they only could be affected like 3% of the year, basically, so maybe that's something to use as part of your requirement, or to come up with your number, is the South Dakota odor requirement. Thanks.
Harold, one question. Do you remember kind of when you did that, what the distance here?
Well, it basically was about 300 feet to the north, and then about, being the prevailing wind kind of blows, I believe to the northeast, it went about 3/4 of a mile. It's all to do with the prevailing winds and smell.
Yep, thanks.
Bethany Eric, Centerville. While I agree that the odor footprint tool is very valuable, I beg to ask the question of all of you, if you depended on well water, would you want 4,000 to 20,000 cows? within a half mile of your property. So we're dealing with a lot of issues here, but odor is one of many. So I love the increased setbacks, protect my water. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't, go ahead.
Going back to the well situation, all my cattle drink out of my own well. My well is probably within, it was there before I got there. There was cattle yards, livestock buildings there before I got there. My well is probably at the most 75 feet from my cattle yard. The water level last time I checked was like 20 or 19 feet from the top. The well itself was 73 feet deep, 77, 73 I think is where it is now after some silting in. There is no problem whatsoever in my well. It has a lot to do with how your well is treated. If your well is up above and burned, like it could be and should be, there should be no risk whatsoever of contamination. And also, if you go to the specs of filtering water, you can go to water treatment plants, stuff like that. Most, no matter what type of water it is, goes through a matter of feet, and it's filtered and safe to drink.
Yeah, sure can, bud.
I just want to offer a
perspective, having been around on this game for a long time. Lincoln County right now faces a challenge. We are approaching the population of 80,000 people. And if we intend to keep ag as part of our heritage, we have to do what Eric is talking about and what many of you were talking about. If young people are going to become engaged in agriculture, animals are the best way to do it. You can't buy your way into 10,000 acre of land and start farming. So animal, that's the way you're raised. I mean, I grew up, you raise livestock. So the simplest way that we can stimulate more young people to get involved in into animal production, from my vantage point, is a challenge that the Planning Commission has, as well as the commissioners have. And animal is production. We live in an area that is blessed, because how many others have a Smithfield located 30 or 40 miles away whose goal is to increase their production? They want more livestock available. So why can't we do something smart, like try to figure out a way that we can get more young people involved, creating more animal production and feeding it north? The other thing that may be a sleeping giant, there's CJ Foods. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. CJ Foods is a company, Swan's background. CJ Foods is a South Korean company that produces Asian food. And they have this unit up there, this building, that is about, half mile to 3/4 of a mile long. They're going to produce egg rolls at about 1,300 a minute. You put that in your mind. And some of those egg rolls are going to need pork. Now, when you put two things together, you put Smithfield over here that's producing pork, and you put Foods over here that's going to use pork, and we sit down here 30 miles away. Let's get something. I mean, we have an opportunity like no other one. The last thing I want to say is this, and housing units have been bounced around for a long time. And I totally agree with the young man, I forgot, Mason. I totally agree with you, Mason. If you're a generation farm there, to me, you have some rights because you're, what, fifth generation?
Fifth on one side, sixth on the other.
Yeah, well, you've been there a long, long time, and I hope you stay there a long, long time. And then to have somebody move in and have to have the same rights to what you want to do as somebody, I don't think that's right. Now, I may be totally wrong, but that's where my heart is. Hell, I was raised on a farm, still got a farm. So I just want to encourage all of you to work with this commission to try to come up with these things. And I commend Eric for coming out. And I've had some meetings with some very interesting people. I see Lynn Hurley is sitting out there. We've talked with them. So you've got opportunities to do this before we close the door with so many housing units being flooded out there. And if you look at the map of Lincoln County, I may have had a poor analysis on this, but when you put the board up, you see blackheads all over the place because those are housing units, and it's hard to find a place for them to go. But I'm all for the young person getting involved, ma'am. My heart's with you. Thank you.
All right, so yeah, please, everyone here and not here, bring ideas, bring these mass to your setbacks, bring them on to us, and again, like Commissioner Scott mentioned earlier, I'm an electrician, I'm a power guy, I don't know CAFOs as much as you all probably do, so that's why we have these public inputs. Please bring that all forward.
What do you guys, what's your thought as a commission as far as, getting rid of all these moving parts where we've got classes and different setbacks for each class and these ranges and so forth, and just simplifying it down to, here's your animal unit, here's your setback per animal unit, and you just plug and play and go.
For myself, I'm a processor, so it takes me a while, but I mean, I see no setback to what you're saying. I mean, I see no reason why that wouldn't work. Now, with that said, I'd like to definitely think on it more.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Get more information.
Well, and I think
Makes sense.
I think we have to have a lot of discussion on what that number is then, right? I mean, then we decide. But then we're only arguing about, or I should say arguing, but discussing one number instead of multiples.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess, like my thoughts, I mean, if you go over the river to the east, I don't think you need to ask for permission. You know, if you get, 1,000 head, I think you need a permit from the DNR in Iowa. That's it. So, I mean, it's your property, you can
Do what you want. As long as you have a state permit.
Yeah, but that's at 1,000 head.
Yeah.
You know, if you wanna put a 500 head feed yard, you can't. It's your property.
Yep.
So, I sympathize. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.
Well, and that was one of the points that was, maybe it was between the discussion between you and Mr. Stearns, but, if the state permits don't start till 700 head, or 700 animal units,
Okay.
yeah, I think, was that right, Jared? Yeah, but whatever that number is, I mean, what business do we got dinking around with it below that too, I mean, that brings up, I didn't realize that, but that's an interesting level.
My problem is, it's, we put all these restrictions on these small guys trying to get started, but then, what ends up happening is in these big outfits that, they don't even live here, they live in Michigan or California or whatever, they come and buy property, put these huge CAFOs on there, they're just massive, that aren't, they don't live here, and then that's just, the people that live here, been living here for years, generations, like, let's help them out, those are the ones that are getting squeezed out. And I think we need to let these younger farmers, the next generation's gonna be coming up, like it or not, time's marching on, and I think we need to, have that opportunity for them. And I don't think we should be standing in the way. And, but, because big money's out there, there's plenty of it, and it's coming from out of state, and there's really no barrier really. I mean, it's just whoever agrees with it, with the project, stamps it approved and it's built. Whereas like young guys, they don't really have the capital to do what they want, So,
And then have to do a conditional use permit in the
and
process.
if they got a neighbor that disagrees, and again, that's, like you said, throw your plans out the window, and so that ain't right either. So I think we gotta do a better job of facilitating the population we do have to be more successful in agriculture.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Oh,
I would
well
agree with
said.
you totally.
You know, science has played such a important role. I don't think we've mentioned this. But when you look at hog confinements today, they're not open curtain barns. They're very scientific. Your feed that you're feeding them is very scientific, so your odor is probably non-existent. And I'm going to use this example. I took my wife to Rochester, Minnesota, and we stopped in a little town called Alden, Minnesota, and we bought some gas. And I looked down the road, and there were two huge hog confinements. And my wife is rather urban. And anyway, we took off, and she said, "Where are we going?" And I said, "We're going to drive right up next to those two confinements." Well, it was a typical reaction that her car would never be the same, and they would have an odor forever and everything else. And she can't find the fire in the dark. I mean, that's no cool. She lives in town. So anyway, we drove up, rolled down the windows, and I said, "Now, what do you smell?" Now, you could tell there was livestock around, but as far as an odor, no. Okay? So I said, this idea that hog confinements now are very scientific, they're very clean, if you look at them, that, my God, they have to pass all kinds of requirements, they got all kinds of stringent things. So when we start talking about setbacks, we ought to look at a different kind of setback, because I don't think that the odor situation has a bearing anymore, as much as it used to. Because, I know you can't put one in the middle of Sioux Falls, although it might be a good example of what you have to live with sometimes. But then so is Smithfield, doesn't smell great either, so what? So I'm just saying, scientifically today, agriculture is in a whole new area than it was 10 or 15 years ago.
For sure 31. Right? I mean, I was just out of high school when they did this, and I remember, and that's one thing I think that's important to remember is the ordinances that we have today were written in 1995, and that was, if you guys, that was kind of when custom feeding pigs was becoming a deal and hog confinements were becoming a deal. And this was written for that. This was written for 2,000 head hog buildings in 1995, and they smelled and we didn't want to smell them. And we're in 2026, and hog buildings don't smell anymore, and young people want to feed cattle and raise pigs, and we need to, instead of putting handcuffs on them, we need to help them out.
So
Is my opinion.
Yeah, no, so moving forward, can I create a half a plan? I mean, should we concentrate on two main areas first and then start peeling back the little things we find?
Yep.
Let's start with setbacks.
Yep, I think that'd be a good place.
And then maybe we start looking at the property rights, as far as houses next to each other being able to expand and whatnot. Maybe concentrate on those two things and then start peeling back.
And I think
cap on it, this, that.
if we need to have conditional use permit or not.
That's fair. Yep.
And then what's the base animal unit number, like, when do we start, like Commissioner Mosier's saying here? I mean, is it 700, is it 1,000, is it 500? Right now, we're starting at 200 animal units, which I think rightfully we could have a debate about, we could have discussion about that, like, where do we have to start that number at?
Yep.
Totally agree.
So let's start at some of the bigger things, and then as we focus on that, let's start peeling away the things that come out of it.
And then so if we take, where's that base animal unit number at where we start? And then we look at setbacks, and we look at conditional use versus permitted special, I believe is what it would be, use. And maybe everybody goes home and thinks about that, and we pick up there next month and continue the conversation.
Sounds great to me. just the one thing to consider also when we start talking through all this, there's some of the things that the state controls. Like again, odor, wells, manure spreading and stuff, that's not us, they all have their permits and things that have to go through there, so I know we always consider that because it's part of life, but we concentrate on the things that we can control and not interfere with some of the state stuff, so it's something to keep back of our heads.
Yep. Cool.
Yep, please.
Lynn Hurley, 48032, 277th Street, Canton. Just to commend you all for this discussion tonight. I'd also like to commend these Renly boys and the other young people out here. It is not easy to come in front of this circus, right? And they're not at the size that really should be impacted by formal use permits. So, good job, guys. And they're really the future. The other thing I'd like you to consider, as well as some of the other things you've talked about, which are excellent, is what's the normal size for a family farmer to break even? What kind of size is that? Is it 1,000 head cattle feedlot, 2,000 head cattle feedlot, 2,400 head hog confinement? And I think that could impact some of the use permits, whether it's conditional use or special use, whatever. Does that make sense? Because there are some differences in there.
Yeah.
And the last request I would have would be, sometimes in these things, they get heated and we paint everybody with the same brush and the same paint. And what I'm asking is, if we look at where those financial break-evens are, the bigger one should have a different paint, different brush. The other one should have something different, in my opinion. Okay, does that make sense?
Would you suggest like different animals, different setbacks? Is that what you're saying, or are you just looking at this?
Mostly size.
Size, okay.
Yep. So, for example, Commissioner Schmidt mentioned 30 years ago, well, no one had 2,400 head of feeder pigs 30 years ago, or 1,000 head feedlot. You were probably one of the largest in the county. Now that's pretty much break even to have those size facilities.
Okay.
Any comments on that? Make sense?
Part-time job.
Part-time job,
Yeah.
absolutely, part-time job. So for young folks and others to come in front of you respectfully and say, I want to build 1,000 head feedlot, and those that aren't familiar with that would say, holy mackerel, the county's going to hell, right? Well, that's a part-time job, or they're going to do that with raising calves and row crop and other things. Does that make sense, boys? Yeah. So if you could consider that in the analysis, that'd be great.
And to your point, Mr. Hurley, and I didn't do a very good job of explaining it, so thanks for coming back around to that, because in 1995, 1,000 head was a big feed yard in Lincoln County. And so the size and scope of it in 1995 probably required a larger separation distance just because of the size. But in today's world, and with today's technology, it's not that big. Like I said, it's a pretty part-time gig almost, or you've got other things to do. And so we need to look at it in 2026 terms, in my opinion, and I think that's what you're saying, versus 1995 terms.
Right. And the Department of Economic Development in South Dakota just funded, as part of the Ready Loan, a hog confinement where our Congressman Thune grew up, right? Maybe some of you heard that, but that's a long way from here. It's a long way from a processing plant. That's how much they want to get livestock developed in South Dakota, right? Is that the Department of Economic Development is funding a standalone 2,400 head. What's that town out there?
Murdo is where he's from.
Yeah, so you can go see Old Town collectibles at Murdo and then go to the hog
Go
barn.
see cars and go to the hog building, yeah.
But anyway, boys, thank you very much, because you guys are the future of this thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, with thoughts of like the break even and stuff, I guess that's, yeah, I mean, that's what I think in like Iowa they do, it's more has to do with like, the DNR, like, okay, water and all that kind of stuff, getting too big, where it's like, yeah, I mean, if the number's gonna change in the break even, depending on the operation, depending on all the other stuff. So, I'm really not in the business of micromanaging people, so I'd rather be more hands-off. Especially if it's outside the planned growth area and it's supposed to be agriculture, then, I'd rather see that than a bunch of solar farms, I guess. But, I'd rather have a bunch of guys with, cow-calf operations and feedlots, that'd be great to see.
Yep.
So.
Yep. All right, oh, yes, please.
You're looking for places to start, as far as the break even, that part of stuff goes. I think with the young farmers, you have to start at what is their income on putting up a facility and the custom feeding operations. They're not owning it, I know that, but it's the boys with the money that are paying the bills. They're starting these guys, helping these guys get started. And that's the same way with any business. It's not the laborer that's got the money. It's the guy with the money paying the laborers, and the laborers are the one that are running a big percentage of the actual economy. Thank you.
Yes. Please, sir, yes.
Jared Kruger, 27351, Highway 17, Lennox. I'm 30 years old. I'm the third generation to farm where I farm. My parents are retired. I rent the farm from them. The biggest thing, I think, is, been thinking about this a lot the past couple of years, is if I didn't have the privilege to farm, I don't think I'd be around here. I'd probably be on the western side of the state, where there's less people, maybe a little more opportunity for a young guy, where they want young guys. So that's, I guess, my point. I don't think I'd be here if I didn't have the opportunity to farm.
Great, thanks for doing that, too. Great start. Yep, very good start, everybody.
So just to clarify for everyone, and I want to thank everybody for coming and sharing your comments, and I'm sure people will talk to us over the next month, but, so we're going to come back next month and we're going to continue this kind of open forum process like you guys seen we did with the others, but we're going to talk about, next month, we're going to start with, not limited to, setbacks, conditional use versus permitted special, and then the animal unit number on where to start.
Works for me.
That's where we'll start from, but not limited to.
Sounds solid.
Very good.
You want any drafts? You want any drafts of that?
What was that, Mr. Brown?
Would you mind just starting with that draft of, I guess, the examples I used?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be some.
I'm not saying that has to be the number, but at least it's a start.
Something to look at.
Something to look at. And then maybe make the break at $199 or $19.99.
$9.99.
Or $9.99 animal units. Yep, on the conditional versus.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay. We can start from there.
This is gonna be off the wall.
Okay.
Before you go, I want to make
Okay. Anything else on this subject, anybody? Again, thanks again, bring back all these ideas next month. Tell your friends. All right, Commissioner Schmidt?
Chair, can we have a round of applause for our officer who has stood there the whole night? Can we give him a round of applause? Thank you.
What do you think the right setback should be?
All right, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn, Scott.
Second, Moser.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you, everybody.